All right, today we are going to begin our review of Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent. The goal of these reviews is to simply help you remember what you were taught in seventh grade. So it is not going to be an in-depth review. It's this video I'm aimed to keep short, and so because of that, each day I'm going to give you 3 questions that we'll try to answer in the notes and then in your reading. So if you can take away 3 points each day, that is good enough, and that will ultimately help you on the K-Prep. So what we're looking at today, what does Mesopotamia mean? Number 2, why did civilization start in the Fertile Crescent? And number 3, what made the Fertile Crescent fertile? So follow along on your notes. We'll type these answers in together, and we'll start with number 1, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means land between 2 rivers. And if you look on our left, this yellow region is what's known as Mesopotamia. It's that area. And within it are 2 rivers. These 2 rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates, and we'll look closer at that in 1 second. If we zoom out on the right, when we're talking about Mesopotamia, we're over here in Asia, and specifically right in this region where modern-day Saudi Arabia is, but it's in Asia right here. So on your notes, number 1, Mesopotamia means land between 2 rivers. I'm going to do like this, rivers. Number 2, those 2 rivers are the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. So number 2 on your notes, T-I-G-R-I-S, Tigris and Euphrates. Notice how they run right through this region that we call Mesopotamia. Number 2, Tigris, Tigris, T-I-G-R-I-S. I guess I'm going to highlight it each time. That'll be annoying. Here we go. Tigris, okay. Now, if you look, this green region is what's known as the Fertile Crescent. It contains Mesopotamia, and it also contains ancient Egypt, and we'll look at ancient Egypt in a couple weeks. But altogether, it makes this crescent shape, this half-moon shape. And our second question today was, well, what makes the Fertile Crescent fertile? First of all, fertile is a word that means soil that is good for growing crops. If something is fertile, it's able to produce goods or crops or whatever or something. So in this case, the Fertile Crescent has good soil that can grow crops. And so number 3 on your notes, the fertile means soil that is good for growing crops. Number 4, the Fertile Crescent is good for growing crops because the rivers flood and leave behind silt, S-I-L-T. Silts. Silt should be a word that you've come across before. As you look here, silt is fine sand or clay that helps enrich soil. And so what happens is that rivers flood, and that irrigates the land. That means it waters the land. It waters the soil. This watering of the soil allows plants and crops to grow. One reason plants and crops are able to grow is because as rivers flood, they leave behind silt. That's this fine sand or clay, and that silt helps enrich the soil. So the soil is filled with nutrients because of the silt, and that's going to help these plants and crops to grow. So on your notes, number 4 we said was silt. Number 5, silt is the fine sand or clay that helps enrich soil. Helps enrich soil. And our last question was, well, why does civilization start in the Fertile Crescent, or why does civilization begin in Mesopotamia? The rivers and the climate are going to enable food to grow in this fertile soil. Back then, prior to Mesopotamia and this civilization, people would be nomads. They would travel and hunt for food. And so as their food traveled, they would have to travel and follow their food. But because plants are able to grow in this region, people are able to eat them, meaning people don't have to follow their plants. They can stay in one area. Additionally, because plants grew, animals ate them. And that meant people could start raising animals and eating the animals. So this allowed people to stay in one place as opposed to following their food like the nomads and the hunter and gatherers before them. So on your notes, civilization began in Mesopotamia because the rivers and climate enabled food to grow. Food or crops, either one. But this allowed people to stay in the same place, so they did not have to follow their food. Thus, they can start building houses. They can start building. They can get jobs, and that is what's going to allow the civilization to grow. So today we saw, what does Mesopotamia mean? It means land between two rivers. Number two, why did civilization start in the Fertile Crescent? Well, because the Fertile Crescent was able to grow food, and so people could stay at one place. Number three, what made the Fertile Crescent fertile? The Fertile Crescent was fertile because the rivers would flood, it would leave behind silt, it would help enrich the soil, and that allowed people to grow crops and then to eat those crops. So there are your three answers. Tomorrow we're going to look at Sumer, the first civilization, or the first city in the civilization. And that's it for today.